move to it. All right. So here's kind of the agenda for the day. I don't always stick with it, but at the outset, levels of measurement, we have to understand what our variables levels of measurement are, because certain tests only allow certain levels of measurements of variables. So what is that? And let's figure that out. Okay, Likert type items, are they ordinal or are they scale? That flows from the levels of measurement conversation. Okay, test selection, how do I pick the right test? Okay, how do I set up my data? That's important. Everyone's got access to create an Intellectus account. Okay. And Melissa, we get it to them for a day or something of that sort?
Yep, it'll be active until tomorrow.
Fantastic. And it's, and many of you may well own it already, but it's dirt cheap out. It's like 59 bucks. Okay, so it's cheap. So if you like it, get it. Clinical significance and statistical significance. We haven't talked about that before, but somehow that came across my radar, and let's just have a quick conversation about that. And then we'll talk about different analyses. By the way, I think the literature says, I don't think, the literature says, but I don't know if it's continuing to be true. The literature says 80% of DNP projects are pre-post tests, PICOT tests, okay? So we're not doing flying anybody to the moon here. We're doing a simple PICOT test. So for a majority of you folks, I'll show you that for sure, okay? It's simple, so just really take it easy. And I also want to talk about the tool now has an AI summary piece. So I wouldn't really use it in the results chapter, but it's probably a good kickoff to the discussion chapter, okay? How do we download our results, and then Q&As, but I'll swing in and out for Q&As, as we move along this thing. All righty. So levels of measurement. Basically, variables have 3 levels of measurement, okay? A variable, variable can be a nominal level variable. That is to say, just a label, male, female, Republican, Democrat, okay, whatever, Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, they're just labels. There's no order to these things, okay? They're just names of things, all right? And a lot of variables have that, okay? And it's the least specific, I'll say, as well, all right? So, but some of the tests, okay, need to know, what region you're in or what gender you are or whatever. All right. We also have now ordinal level. By the way, check out the Venn diagram. Just that's a symbol that's used in the tool. Okay, that's when you see that, that means your variable is either nominal or it needs to be nominal. All right. All right. Next one is ordinal. Ordinal is ordered. Okay, it has a label: small, medium, large. Okay. 0 degrees, 25 degrees, 100 million degrees, has an order. So it's got labels and an order, okay? So in my example, small, medium, extra large, okay? All right, so they are ordered, but they're not equal intervals per se, or the distance in ounces is not the same, perhaps from a 8 ounce to a 12 ounce to a 32 ounce. Do they even sell big gulps anymore? I have no idea, but they used to sell big gulps, which were very large drinks. Okay, then third, we have scale level, which is ratio or interval or continuous. Basically, it has everything from above. It's got a label: 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degrees, 4 degrees, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. It's got an order: 2's after 1, 3's after 2, okay? But it has equal intervals, equal spaces. That's the important part of this thing, okay? And most things like a regular age or temperature or things of this sort, all right, act on scale level variables. So that's the whole demystification of levels of measurement. You need to know what these are. They impact the test that you pick. PICOT test that I mentioned only uses scale variables, okay? Ordinal and nominal, we're in some other land of tests here. So that's why it's important to know what they are. By the way, a variable could be all three, right? Depending upon how you look at it. If you have age, for example, all right, the actual age, okay, 1 year old, 2 year old, all the way up to 100 years old, okay? You have a nice scale variable, all equal intervals. But a lot of people have age ranges. 18 to 25, 26 to 35, 45 and above, okay? So you have now names, okay? All right, 18 to 25 group, per se, and you have order, but they're not equal, okay? So I can take the age group, okay, ages, and put them into groups. Okay. I can also dichotomize those. Technically, it's still ordinal, but I can say old versus young or some darn thing, you know, 50 or 30, whatever it is, two groups. All right. So, and basically, I'll just say as a general rule of thumb, you kind of want things as grainy as possible, right? If I have a scale level of age, I can put things in ordinal. All right. So I can do that later. You can't go the other way. All right. So try to measure things it's, you know, I would say is as down to pike as you can. Ordinal above nominal, okay, scale above ordinal, if possible. Some things are not possible, like gender, for example. Okay. Quick conversation about Likert-type items. I think it's actually pronounced Likert-type items. The question is this. I have a Likert-type scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree, okay? Is that a ordinal or is it a scale level variable, okay? So the question really is, there's two parts of this. One part is, how do I treat that, okay? One item, strongly agree to strongly disagree. The rule of thumb is, if it's a 3 or 4 point Likert scale, okay? All right, none, some, often, always, or some darn thing, okay? It's all right. So you can use that, keep that as ordinal, all right? If it's 5 or 7 point, okay, Likert scale, you can treat that as continuous with no damage to your results chapter, okay? So just a quick thing about Likert items. Part one, okay. The second part is, it doesn't make a darn bit of difference if you can which one you consider it, because once you start aggregating things, okay, we're in scale land, all right? So that's really important to know. So, for example, when you were in grade school, you had 100 question test, okay? And each question you got correct or incorrect. What is that, by the way? What level of measurement is that? Correct or incorrect? That's a nominal, okay? That's a nominal variable, correct or incorrect. It's just labels, okay? No order to that, it's just a name. But once I add up all of the correct, now I'm in scale level of measurement land, okay? So just know, once you are adding these things together, you're in scale land, all right? But for the individual item, you may want to know, is it a 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 point scale? And you can look at that that link. I wrote a little paper about that, a little white paper about treating Likert-type, individual Likert-type items as a continuous variable, all right? All right. Test selection. The biggest problem and the first problem you're going to have is, what test do I use? If I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me, what test do I use, we'd be doing this from a different place. So it's common not to know, all right? When you're going through stats classes, very often they're saying, this is what a t-test is, but they don't really tell you how to get there often, all right? Or you took a class, all you DNPs, okay, or early faculty, you took the class a year ago, all right? how do I figure out what test? So I want to spend a minute on figuring out what type of test should you use to examine your study aims, given some level of measurement. All right. As it turns out, there's only two parts, okay, that you need to know to figure that out, right? You need to know, how is that study aim languaged? A correlates with B, A predicts B. There's differences, okay? This is statistical language that I'm talking about. These differences, predictions, impact, okay? That makes a difference, okay? It's not the whole story, but you want that language, and I'll show you some of this. The other thing is the level of measurements, right? So, which we just talked about. So you have to be mindful of the language, okay, that's in your aim, okay, or research question, okay, your PhDs out there, okay, and the levels of measurement. So those are really two important things. The test selection is typically put into the data analysis plan. What is that? Where is that? What's in that? Okay. So the data analysis plan is in your methodology. Okay. In your methodology, you're going to go through your study aim. You're going to talk about your participants. You're going to talk about your instruments. You're going to talk about your procedure to administer those instruments to those participants. Fine. Then there's a data analysis plan, which is, what test am I going to use to examine those study aims given that data? Inside that data plan should be three things, okay? One, what is the test? I'm using a paired sample t-test. Great. Okay. What are the assumptions of that test? By the way, the tool has all of the stuff under data plans, but you need to know what the test is. What are the assumptions of that test? All right. Paired t-test has a normality assumption. We can talk about what that means, but just know some of these tests have assumptions associated with them, okay? Two. The third part is a justification. You know, people want to know, okay, you said it's a paired t-test. You gave me the assumptions of the test. Tell me why that is the right statistical test for that study aim, given that level of measurement. And in fact, the answer is in that description. The reason for that test, the justification of that test, is that given the aim, I'm looking for differences from knowledge pre to knowledge post, okay, given that setup, right, same people, okay, and knowledge is a scale variable, okay, the paired t-test is the appropriate test. So those are the three pieces you need for the data plan. But let's get into the test selection a bit more now, all right? All right, PICO. Yeah, PICO questions, you know, honestly, I'm not crazy about the PICO questions, okay? I understand it's a very, I'll say, concise way of adding population. What am I doing? And okay, and fine, have your PICO question. But at the end of the day, when it comes to test selection, you got to get to the heart of the question. What is the real thing I'm trying to do here, right? The fact that you say, I have this group in this region, okay, fine. All right, so, and I'm doing this intervention. I'm going to do a knowledge, you know, or resiliency intervention, okay? That's all important. But at the end of the day, we want to find out, what are the outcome variables, okay? And who's being affected by these things, basically. All right, so I call it PICO light. All of these things get to the core question. Again, write the PICO question. That's the way the system is. Fine, but no, you have to to get to the test question. It doesn't matter what the intervention is. The fact that you're doing an intervention is okay, but it doesn't matter what the intervention is for test selection. So that's all I wanted to say about this. I don't mean that somebody smart came up with this, okay? This PICO domain. By the way, I don't see it in other kinds of, well, maybe there may be some research questions, but okay, enough. But get to the heart of what are the outcome variables, dependent variables, What are the independent variables? That's the key thing. That's what I want to say. Okay, let's go back to the statistical language business, okay? All right, so the most common ways to language these things is really simple, okay? Differences, relatedness, and prediction, okay? There's other kinds of things you could add to this, okay? But basically speaking, okay, these three things get you a long way, okay? Are there differences on A by B, okay? Or differences on A, knowledge, okay? Pre to post, something of this sort, okay? Differences, okay? Related to, okay? Is A related to B? Another very common thing, right? Is income and savings related? Is knowledge and stress related? Okay, all this kind of stuff. Okay, relationships, okay? The other one is prediction, okay? Does A predict B? All right, so this will cover 25 tests, all right? So just having that language of differences, prediction or relatedness, all right? And I guess I'll add correlation perhaps, but all right, most common. All right. I don't think I want to go there just yet. So no. I'll just say this. When we talk about differences, we are really in a t-test ANOVA land, okay? ANOVAs and t-tests look for differences, okay? By groups, over time, okay? So differences, we're in t-test and ANOVA land, okay? Relationships, okay? Where you're really in basically correlation land for scale variables and chi-square land for nominals, okay? So, you're in chi-square land or correlation land there. Prediction, you're in regression land, okay? Regression, say, do these variables predict that outcome variable, all right? So just a quick primer on language and the types of tests that are common there. Okay. Well, before we move on, let's just check in and see if there's any questions here. So before I keep going. Are there any questions? I just want to make sure I'm not losing anybody along the way. Any questions in the Q&A?
One in the Q&A.
All right, there we go. Thank you. All right. My data includes 10 respondents. I think we're going to get to your later page. I did a pre-post paired t-test. Okay. Once you're in this matching of people pre to post, you're in paired t-test land. And 10 respondents that did not respond to both. Just one or the other. Do I do an independent t-test or, okay. So the question is, some people, okay, some people are following this. Some people were in the pre and post and have matched individual one with pre and post, okay? Other people either did a pre or did a post, okay? Do I do the paired t-test? That is just use the people pre to post, okay? Or do I treat them individually, okay? And everybody's got pre-tests, everybody's got post-tests, all right? So, I mean, the short answer is, do both. It takes 2 seconds, okay? Do both, all right? And see, they're consistently different from pre to post. When it's paired, they are, okay? They do different, but here, when they're not paired, they're not different. So I would just say, these kinds of things, you don't have to be a grand wizard. All you got to do is say, let's figure out both permutations here, okay? And then they either match or don't match, okay? And then we can figure it out from there. So, all right. So basically, with any kind of paired t-test or repeated measures ANOVA, like it might be here, pre-post follow-up, that's a repeated measures ANOVA. Paired t-test would be just perhaps the pre and post, all right? The same individual's data in ID1 is on the same row, okay? All right, that's the key point. You have to, when it's paired or matched, they call it, you want one row with all the same responses. All right. Independent t-tests or ANOVAs and things of this sort. Basically, we're considering these people differently, okay? And oftentimes, it's not time pre-post where they may be, in fact, maybe I just answered my question, okay? That this response should not be impacting this response, and it well could be. So Paige, to get to your question, I'm thinking that we just want to use the paired folks, okay? This independent, this is really for different groups, frankly, okay? This is, if you only had people at pre, you had different people at post, and you had still different people at some follow-up, okay? Or males versus females, or whatever other grouping, read nominal, what other groupings that you have, okay? Then we're looking at differences on, say, knowledge by trained physicians versus, you know, some other specialty, right? Okay. Data setup is important though. I'll just say that what I would suggest is inside the tool, there's example data sets. You can go and say, hey, I want to do a paired t-test, okay? Look for the paired t-test, example data set. And then you can, and they'll say, we're looking at knowledge pre and post. You can look to see how the data set up. Oh, I'm doing an ANOVA, I'm doing a regression. Look how the data set up in the examples. Let that guide you, okay, as an example. Data cleaning wizard. So I will show you in the tool the data cleaning wizard. Okay, so I guess I should be making notes about this. All right, so I'll show you how that works. As it turns out, data cleaning, setting up data, organizing data, figuring out the levels of measurement, that's 95% of the job. To actually do the work, 41 seconds. I mean, very quickly to get the results and say, there's a difference there, okay? So, okay. I'll show you the data cleaning wizard. Thoughts about, so clinical significance and statistical significance. Most of what we're doing in these things, okay, DNP projects, research projects, okay, most of the time we're looking at statistical significance, okay? What does that mean? That means there's a 0.05 is the typical probability value, probability that it occurs by chance, okay? And if it's greater than 5 out of 100 times to get it by chance, say 20 out of times, I'm not going to say there's differences. I'm not going to say there's relationships. I'm not going to say that this thing predicts that thing, okay? It has to be a smaller chance, okay, that to say, okay, I'm calling it statistically significant. Clinical significance is about the importance of things, okay? Practical importance, okay? Is it impacting the patients? And as it turns out, some things are statistically significant and not clinically significant. Clinically significant, but not statistically significant. And then yet still others that are both statistically and clinically significant. So the quick comment is, you know, they're both important for evidence-based practice. You know, you should have statistical significance. Well, you need both. You have to make that judgment, okay? All right, let's just look at some of these. Statistical significance is based on probability. It's mathematical, based on p-values. Did you find anything? The downside to this kind of significance is if you have large samples, small differences turn out to be statistically significant, okay? But would probably not be impacting the patients, okay? And it's kind of objective. What is this p-value? Clinical significance based on judgment, based on the importance of meaningfulness of the outcome, okay? Does it matter to folks, patients, okay? and it's more subjective. 3 examples. 1, statistically, but not clinically significant. Blood pressure reduces systolic blood pressure by 2 Hgs, okay? Statistically significant, but doesn't reduce the cardiovascular event or problems, right? Pain medication, okay, or improvement or intervention. Statistically significant, but doesn't move the needle on their actual pain, okay? So statistically, but not clinically. Okay, clinically, but not statistically. Reduce falls by 30% in a small sample, but not statistically significant, okay? 30% is huge. Falls is a big deal, okay? Things that the National Institutes of Health Nursing Research looked at. They did this kind of stuff, okay? This is what, okay? Falls, how to reduce falls and study falls, okay? Big topic. All right, so clinically significant, but not statistically. Palliative care improves quality of life, okay, but doesn't reach significance. Okay. You're impacting people, but okay, gosh, we didn't reach that probability level. All righty. Statistically and clinically, reduce readmission rates by 25%. Awesome clinically. You don't, you know, a quarter of the people are not coming back within 30 days that used to, okay? And it's statistically significant. Education increases med adherence by some percentage and reduces adverse effects, all important stuff. So for DNP projects, for most research, not all, but most research, 1, think about clinical significance, okay? Perhaps in that discussion section, okay? It didn't reach that level. I thought it was going to be 80%, and it did 70% of reducing falls. Great, but it didn't reach significance. So, but statistical significance is really what we're doing here. Okay, I'll review the AI summary. Basically, in the tool, once you do a set of analyses, there's an AI summary that can kind of encapsulate everything for you. All right, now it's time to get logged in. All right. While people are getting logged in for this, any questions in the Q&A? I don't see any. Don't be shy. And then I'll jump to the, and then Melissa, you'll put that into the chat or the Q&A so I can hop out of this.
Yep, I just put it in the chat.
By the way, we also have Ashley and Samantha answering questions, okay? So feel free to ask away. Okay. So let's get my screens organized. First, we had a tiny screen, then we had 1 screen, now we have 2 screens. Some people have 3 screens. So we're all over here. Okay. So quick very brief overview of this. It's a web-based tool, so you can log in from any Mac, any IBM, or PC. All right. The 4 top buttons are important. Projects, upload, gets data in. Management manages data, plots, visualize data, analyses, have all the different types of data. So under the plots, I can get data. Okay, I can upload data from different file formats. Oops, went too quickly there. Okay. All right. There's the example data sets when we're talking about how do we format that data. Okay, you can go to a t-test, okay, paired t-test, all right, and look at time 1 and time 2, all right, and you can see that one person that they're next to each other, okay, they're on the same row. So that was the example of look at example data sets by the type of test to help figure out how that data is formatted. Okay, you can also paste in a flat file, call it enter data manually. Okay, you can paste in an Excel file or something of that sort. Okay, so projects, get data in. Can also get data in by having it shared, and Paige shared a project, and we'll get there. Okay, so 4 ways to get data in: upload data, example data, paste data, shared data. Okay. Management, might as well get Pages in here. So once we have data in, okay, we can manage data. Most of the time we're doing 2 things, basically. Really, variable calculators, okay, is important. That is, how do I create a pretest total score, average score, okay? And download that managed data. So, Paige has got, maybe it's got pretest and post-test. So you have composite scores here. Probably have some post over here. Okay, so pre and post. Once you create those composite scores or average scores or sum scores, you want to download that data so you have that on your desktop. Okay, so you want your data. So those are 2 prime things there. Plotting data, basic plots. Okay. You play with it. You can't break this thing. Okay, so you can, look at some scores. Okay, communication pre, communication post, for example, and you can look at it by different variables. Okay, and kind of see what's going on. Okay. By the way, when we're looking at this, well, a few things. Make sure you're aware of the scale, okay? So, just to be honest, I mean, look, we don't have ways of changing this to 0, okay? But you may want that. All right. So you would just get the data points, okay? I would get the data labels, okay? All right. But I'd probably put this in Excel, frankly, okay? One thing. Also, if I'm doing any kind of analysis on these scores by gender, okay, I'm going to dump this, prefer not to say. I got 2 people here, okay? So I'm going to want, okay, all these other folks, okay? So different types of plots, and you can export them in numerous ways, but just to know that there's 10 typical plots. The other thing I'll mention about this thing is when you're putting variables in, check this out. What are these things? Okay, this is our old trends, levels of measurement. Okay, these are scale, remember, nominal, okay, ordinal. Okay, if your variable doesn't show up here, guess what? It's not labeled as a scale variable. So heads up about these icons, which are in the tests, in the plots, okay? Also note that there's video tutorials every step of the way in management and plots and analyses. Little short 3-minute video how to do it, okay? Since we're here. All right. Not the strongest plot in the world, okay? But you can see what's happening here. You kind of see a little bit of a line here. If I looked at a regression line, kind of get an idea of, okay, as people's scores of communication pre increase, okay, people's scores on communication post increase, both for males and females. Females are starting higher. So just kind of playing around, kind of get an idea of what's happening here. All right. All right. With regard to pre and post communication and agenda drill down. All right. All right. Then we have a whole bunch of analyses, and Paige has done some descriptives. So we have descriptives, okay? We have correlations, relationship questions, okay? We have t-tests, differences questions, okay? ANOVAs, MANOVAs, differences, regressions, predictions, okay? Chi-squares, typically relationships, okay? And then we have other kinds of fancy analyses like structural equation modeling and mediation and moderation. So these are the 4 kinds of buttons for the analyses that you want to be using. We also have decision trees to figure out what test I want to predict an outcome. That's ordinal. I'm doing an ordinal regression. Click. You have to have an ordinal variable. All right, but you can go right to it. Data plans, as I said, for that data analysis plan, we have these 3 things, which is, what test, what's the assumptions of the test, okay? And then really, we should have a justification, okay? All right. Okay, is the appropriate statistical analysis if each of the 2 samples can be matched, okay, given measurement over time, okay, of a scale variable. That should be added in there. All right. And then also power analysis, really important, which is how many people do I need? How many observations do I need? Pair t-test. I won't go into different effect sizes except to say, typically people can, well, 2 things. One is typically middle of the road, medium effect size is probably going to work. A. B, there's constraints. As doc students or anybody, it's not easy to get up participants. So you maybe only be able to get 10, okay, or 8, as Paige will show us in 2 seconds here. All right, so it's not that easy to get people. But for IRB, they're going to want to know, okay, what's the sample size? And perhaps you are using a large effect size. Basically, if it's easy to detect differences, you need a smaller amount of people to find that difference. If it's a small effect or small differences and difficult to detect, you need lots more people to identify that. So that's a downloadable, editable document. Okay. So regarding the quick Q&A about something doesn't reach statistical significance but improves pain for some, is it still practically significant, requires further research? I don't have that skill set to say at what level of pain improvement, okay? So I am not in the health field to answer that competently. So, all right. Okay. So I said we were going to do the data cleaning wizard. So I want to do that. So I'm going to go to projects. I'm going to go to upload data. And I'm going to go to choose a file. Okay, which is the Rosenberg. So you just go and select the file and upload it. But it's worth sharing that that sometimes the Excel files from Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey might well be like this. 3 rows of headers, some demographics, some pre and post tests, okay, and then some open-ended, typical. So what the data clean wizard is, once I uploaded that data file, I get thrown right into the data cleaning wizard. And what it does is it allows me to get rid of these extra headers, okay, that I don't need, okay, and allows me to edit variable names if I'd like, get rid of misspellings if I like, okay. Okay, allows me to create composite scores. I happen to have a 5-point agreement scale that is currently in labels, Likert-type. I have to put them in numbers, okay? And that seems fine with me. They're in the right order, okay? And so I want to turn all of these labels into numbers. First step, okay? and then create the subscales, which is perhaps pre-tests. If I want to sum them, okay, and I can sum these guys. Sometimes a question is reverse coded. If you don't have reverse coded items, just ignore what I'm going to say. For those that do have reverse coded items, it just means that a question was asked in reverse, and you just have to put in the min and max of the scale. And what it's doing is flipping the 1 to 5, 5 goes to 1, 2 goes to 4, and so forth, okay, before it creates that sum score. So in one fell swoop, you can really create a sum or an average of your different items in your pre or post or whatever, and reverse code in all one fell swoop. Okay. All right. And then just finish up. Okay. So what we've done is created a composite score of pre and post. Okay. All right. So Laura asked, when would you create a sum or an average? Follow the instructions of the tool. Okay, because sometimes they have norms based on either a sum or an average. If you don't have any direction there, I like to average things because I know clearly if I have four questions, okay, and I have a 1 to 5 scale, I can go from what? From 4 to 20. I'm not quite sure what a 13 means, okay? But if I average them, and it's a average from 1 to 5 now, I know what a 4 is. Basically, they all agreed, okay? I know what a 5 is. They all basically strongly agreed. All right, so just to wrap my brain around the qualitative piece of that is helpful. All right, I'm gonna do one last thing before we get going here, and that is just to do that paired t-test, because I know most of you are doing that, okay? So I have pre and post test scores. I'm going to make sure that, oops, I want to make sure we find some differences here. Okay. Okay. So what have we done? We've uploaded data, okay? We use the data cleaning wizard to create these composite scores. And now, basically, we want to just conduct a descriptives, okay? Descriptives on the demographics, sex. Conduct descriptives on everything. And then the paired t-test, since that's what a lot of folks are doing, paired samples t-test. All you do is click the paired samples, go to variable 1, add the pre-test, scale variable, add the post-test. Okay. So, and then click calculate. That's it, folks. It's very simple. So, as I said, there's an assumption. Talk about this some other point. The results are in plain English. Guess what? It was a significant difference from pre to post. This is how you would report that, okay? You can see that the post is higher than the mean. And here's the interpretation of that. The mean was lower than the mean of the post, or the post was higher than the mean of the pre. This is an APA table. Getting back to that clinical significance, this is an effect size, by the way, okay? And those effect sizes come in small, medium, large, okay? So that is a indicator of that clinical significance, okay, built into this thing. And I think anything north of 0.5 is well, I believe anything lower than 0.3 is a small effect. 0.3 to 0.5 is a moderate effect. Anything north of 0.5 is a strong effect or large effect. So here we're getting significance and effect, and here we're getting statistical significance and clinical significance. Okay, that's worth highlighting. Okay, the hour is moving along, so let's get to other folks. All right, so Paige, let's go ahead and unmute Paige. Let's go ahead and get to the project. Siobhan will try to get you, and I'll stay past 2 o'clock. Okay, so hi Paige.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you for taking my questions.
Yep. So good question. So as I thought about it, I think one of the assumptions is that that one response should not be impacting another response. So that makes me want to just do the pair t-tests, okay, on these things, okay?
Okay.
So, and really, guys and gals, really, from the data, you can almost predict what the question is, right? When you have pre-post knowledge or pre-post whatever we have here, communication. So communication pre to communication post. Keep going down, okay. So communication pre to post, okay. Before we get there, let me say something about your descriptive, sorry. The descriptives are good to make sure that everything is cool with what you're doing. So, okay, hey, gosh, yeah, most of my folks are women. Hey, gosh, most of my folks are white. Hey, gosh, the mins and maxes are between, okay, 1 and 5. Okay, this is maybe 1 and 6. Okay, so if you had a 66, okay, so that might be a data entry error. So you want to just look at those, okay, to make sure they make sense. All right. So, we're comparing pre to post communication. Basically, the question is, does the ratings at pre differ than the ratings at post? That's what the pair t-test is examining. Here we can see, hey, guess what? That was significant. All right, hunky-dory. We can see it's significant there. That effect size, okay. All right, is happening in a strong or large effect, okay. And that there are differences in communication pre to post. Okay.
So I think you answered my question in that I have 6 subscales, so I need to hit the button 6 different times to do, recognition pre to post, leadership pre to post, and analyze it in that way, correct?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I, because I have 10 extra respondents, even though they are unpaired, can I still run that data separately as an unpaired t-test?
You could, but I would not put in the people. Yeah, if you have unique people at pre and unique people at post, sure.
Okay.
But don't kill yourself. And what are you doing?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, yeah. So, I mean, my guess is that you stated to your committee that you're doing a paired sample t-test, run with the paired sample t-test.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. All righty. All righty. Let's see if there's other folks here. Is Moab here?
If you could
Moab,
raise your hand, if you shared your data.
Okay. And then Marisa, how do you calculate nominal data as a proportion? So very simple. Very simple there. So let's just say let's just say that we have a variable called test question 1, okay, okay. And in here I have, you know, these people all got it correct. Right? And these people got it incorrect, all right? If you keep it as a scale variable, okay, you can just get the mean of that, okay? You just get the mean descriptives on the test question 1. Right? That mean is 0.70, okay? That proportion is 70%. 70% got that correct, okay? So that's how you do it. I would just keep it as a scale, but even if it was nominal, okay, this is incorrect. Okay, incorrect. So, sure. So even if you get descriptives on that, okay, on that question 1 nominal, you're still going to wind up with that percent of correct, which is 70%. Okay, so that's the percentage question. My advisor said I can't use mean for strongly agree. Well, you know, first of all, follow your advisor. Okay, so now if you start combining these strongly agree, strongly disagree questions, okay, you are definitely in the mean language. You're not literally combining strongly disagree label with disagree with strongly disagree. What is that? What am I gonna, what is that average score? Okay, it's nonsensical. So you can't really have that. So at an individual level, I agree with you and perhaps your advisor that keep it as ordinal, that's fine. But once you turn those to numbers, and once you start combining them, as in my example of correct or incorrect, once I add up the number of corrects, I'm in a scale mean and standard deviation level. So, okay. Other questions? I don't see other questions at the moment, but let me go back to this for a quick second. So we're in the question. I just want to put out to some of you folks that you can get a free consultation with me to talk about your project, how to move forward with that, or helping with that. Samantha can help with the students, okay? Particularly setting, and by the way, most of the time within an hour, your whole results could be, you know, done, Zoom recorded, okay, and so forth. Get you on the right track. Ashley can help with demonstrations for faculty, demonstrations with your uh, with your whole department, okay? Trials, courseware, okay? Melissa, any general questions? Also, she can set up student and faculty presentations if you want me to go give a talk. Okay, happy to do that. Our phone number, 888-383-6639. Different websites for our qualitative tool, our quantitative tool, and then Statistic Solutions is really the, you know, kind of lots of stuff around stats, you know, tons of pages that's been out there for a while. Okay, question. How do I do a regression with multiple variables, selecting some to control the analysis? I think what you're talking about is is stepwise regression. So if I wanted to say, does pre-test predict post-test, controlling for gender, okay, that you can go to a regression, it's called hierarchical work. If I want to predict my post-test, okay, but I want to control for, let's just say, age and sex, and then my next step is really to do the pretest. So what this gives you is really saying, it goes through assumptions, okay? So really here we can see that at step 1, okay, gender, which was gender and age, okay, did predict, okay, post-test, okay? That was statistically significant. When you added pre-test, it was still statistically significant. And then you can kind of compare those two models. The first model with just your demographics in there, and then your next model with everything in there, okay? So I think that's what you need. Obviously, feel free to hop on a consulting call. Other questions? I'll just say that feel free to go back for a second to share this video. Everyone's going to be getting the video. Please share the current video with others that are struggling or may need help. If they're messing around with Excel or SPSS, sometimes it's challenging. So feel free to share links and then upcoming webinars on quant, on qual, and on methodology are forthcoming too. I see some more questions. Melissa's okay. So great. So Melissa just put in information to schedule, okay, for same day. I'll take some folks tomorrow afternoon. I have a few openings. Okay, and I think with that, anything else, Ms. Moran?
No, I think that's it.
Terrific. I wish everyone a wonderful week. Deep breaths. You'll get through this. There's a lot of DNPs and doctors kicking around here. So anyway, I wish you all well. Thank you for attending. Thanks for paying attention, and please do share this with others. With that, I'll say goodbye and have a safe weekend. Bye-bye.